This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
Police in Las Vegas found themselves in the middle of a UFO mystery last month after
To us, big eyes. They have big eyes.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal?
One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious.
What sign? I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yeah, I'm looking right at him.
Okay, hang on.
He's right.
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, good. He's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
Mythical Legends Podcast with your host Daniel Barnett.
Hey guys, and welcome to another Mythical Legends podcast. We have a great podcast lined up for us today, and co-hosting with me today is Mr. Brian King Sharp. How are you, Brian?
I'm good, Daniel. How are you, sir?
I'm very, very well. Good as always. Good. So we have a very, very good podcast lined up, don't we?
Yes, we do. I've been excited about this, and I was glad to get the invite to hop on and co-host with you today. I'm glad it worked out in my scheduling. So,
yeah, bro. It's we have some comments come through. I'm gonna say hi to some people before we get going. Let's say hi to Tate. I think a few of these are from your side, Brian.
Yep, there's Tea Time with Tiffany. She's our producer over on Paranormal Odyssey with Wayne.
Troy in Tennessee. We have Charlotte J. Facebook user. I take it that's my nan because she's put kisses at the end of it. We then have Tara Smith and Cheryl Peacock. I take it. I think so.
Yep, that's Cheryl Peacock here in North Carolina.
Brill, amazing. Right, so I think, Brian, instead of waiting around and chatting, I reckon we just get straight into it. Let's get straight into it, and let's just run.
Let's do it.
Guys, please welcome to the stage someone who I'm sure that you'll know. Hi, Renee. How are you?
I'm great, buddy. How you doing, Daniel?
I'm very, very well, yes.
All right.
So,
hey, Brian.
Good to see you, Renee. Thanks so much for being with us.
Of course. Good to see you again. It's been a minute.
Last summer, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, coming up on almost a year. Well, I am so stoked to be here with you both today, Daniel. As you know, I don't do a lot of podcasts, but I so love what you are doing, so I had to definitely make some time for you. So let's get into this.
So, yeah, we have a great podcast lined up, Ranae. So I'm coming with the first question. Could you tell us about how you got interested into the world of cryptids and cryptozoology?
I don't want to age myself, but I think my real hair color might give me away. I'm a contemporary of my Bigfoot hugging co-hosts. Cliff, Matt, Bobo. We all grew up when In Search Of, just were those fresh reruns with Leonard Nimoy. Bigfoot was everywhere in pop culture. The Patterson-Gimlin film, Daniel, when you wanted to watch a movie, you couldn't see it on TV. I had to actually go into the cinema. So I remember I think it was the K Cinema back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So this would be the early 70s. I grew up seeing some clippings in the paper. I grew up in South Dakota, on the plains of South Dakota, kind of like for you over in the UK or anybody around the country. Just think of that. Well, I'm dating myself again when I say Little House on the Prairie, but I essentially grew up with that kind of geography. So there'd be a random newspaper clippings. There wasn't so much on television at that time, but a random newspaper clipping. The Patterson-Gimlin film came out. That by this time, years later now, it's about 10 years later, not quite. that's going around in actually in the theater. So my dad took me to see that. And I remember having my mind blown and having my dad look at me. Actually, Daniel, this is one thing. Being this little kid and seeing this giant ape-like figure on this footage, it's going across the screen, and looking at that, and then looking at my dad, and he turns down and looks at me, and he's like, "What is that?" But the best part, and really my favorite thing of Bigfoot is, if that's not real, then how was that faked then? And that became that whole, instead of my dad telling me what it was, he really asked me what it was. And I think of, as we then started watching In Search Of and these other shows, which wasn't just Bigfoot, it was the Loch Ness Monster, it was Easter Island, it was all these mysteries of the world, it was a curiosity. So that became kind of a special thing for my dad and I. How was that made? How did they do that? Why can't they find that? What, and then being smart about it. Like, don't let anybody hoodwink you. So between testing stunt gear with my dad and watching, Bigfoot shows and those paranormal mystery shows, that's how I initially kind of got into it.
Wow, that's incredible. That is honestly incredible. So kind of leading on from that, could you tell us, and this is going off kind of the topic of cryptids and Bigfoot a bit, but could you tell us about your work in the field of biology? Because you're a brilliant scientist. So
This is great. Thank
let's hear
you.
about.
So again, I was raised on the plains of South Dakota, but I have always loved rivers and the woods. And in fact, moving out to Washington State many moons ago, I basically left South Dakota after high school, and I came out to Washington State and started going to school. And actually, the first time I went through college, I was a physical anthropology major. A lot of people don't realize that. Dr. Meldrum and Jeff and I get to have some fun conversations. And it wasn't quite what I wanted, so I led back into what I originally wanted to be when I was young. I wanted to go out and study the big cats or bears. Those were what fascinated me the most, were big cats and bears. So being out here in Washington, getting my degree, I went to University of Washington. Specifically, I went to the School of Aquatic and Fishery Sciences because they had the best program to get me as close as possible to study brown bears. It was either that or go with Ted Peach in Kamchatka, Russia. And those were the two places where I could do that. And I was fortunate enough to work with the Fisheries Research Institute, basically working with the top people in their field. And that led me down to, obviously it's funded by, where is the money behind science? That always is what drives it. Who is the person who is doing that research? First off, what's the hook? What fascinates you? What do you wake up thinking about and trying to understand better? Then who is doing that work? But the kicker is, how is it getting funded? Or how do you bring in another project that gets it funded? So for me, that led me into bear and salmon. I mean, actually, this is something I think I've mentioned to you before. I work with a lot of indigenous people, and this is one of my favorite cups. Make sure you can see this. This is yeah, that is the basic masked and tribal image for the interaction between bear and salmon, which is, why does the salmon go up that creek, or how does a bear recognize, all of the biometrics on a bear? It needs to put on all of those, the caloric intake, so it's going to survive, where it is in the hierarchy, how that fish knows where to go. It blows my mind to this day. We still don't know. We still don't understand why all of these fish are pooling in front of this particular creek, their natal stream, that they'll come back to, that they'll go through thousands of miles. It's just mind-blowing. They'll come back to that spot. And when they go for that initial pulse, there's basically a population. We think this population of fish, these fish are genetically different than a fish that went into Eagle Creek or Happy Creek, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's all these fish, hundreds, sometimes thousands of fish pooled at this little 3-foot wide creek. And you think it's one big pulse, but there's all these little micro pulses. And I won't nerd out here with the details, but we still don't know what is that trigger that pushes them. We started this research in the 40s. We still don't know. Is it the salinity of the water? Is it temperature? Is it oxygen? Is it, the diurnal factor? Water flow, upwelling. It's just, I love that stuff. I mean, basically, I like to tell people I've been this little curiosity-driven organism from birth. I mean, I was given a baby alive doll as a child, and I had it for one day, and they showed me, how to take care of it. And then I think it was that next day after Christmas, I was upstairs with scissors taking it apart. I mean, how did it work? I mean, my mom's horrified, but she's like, okay, we see what path you're on. So that's what led me to science. And from there, it's funded by Salmon Research. So I then was employed by NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And I basically niched myself in with river restoration. So I worked on a restoration team. So I basically am an expert on that river system of the alpine environment all the way down to that estuary. So that includes the water, the trees, the rocks, the air, the critters, from the brown bear down to the macroinvertebrates, and the Bigfoot that might be in the woods there too. So that's my story, and that's how I wound up there.
Sounds incredible. Would you agree, Brian? That sounds like an awesome kind of career, let's say.
It's definitely a little different than Sasquatch research, that's for sure.
I will tell you this, one of my first days, because my love for Bigfoot really is, I love hearing reports and the stories, and some of them are fun, but some of them are the ones you're like, how do you explain this? And that's what keeps me intrigued on this phenomena. You can categorize a lot of those out, but what are those ones at the end of the day? It's like, this person has everything to lose, nothing to gain, ridicule and scorn. Or there's just multiple witnesses, those ones that just stop you in your tracks. So ever since I was a young child, that's been my situation. Now I land myself out in the Pacific Northwest, the hotbed of sightings, and I am working with tribal members. And from day one, I knew that it is not respectful to bring up and ask, well, first off, to bring up Sasquatch or Bigfoot in an indigenous environment. Let them start the conversation, if you will. So I had been working there for maybe 6 years before an intern, this is a long story for another time though, but an intern missed their ferry and showed up late and comes up and kind of like, changed the subject. Was like, hey, Renee, how's your Bigfoot book coming in? I got a talking to by their elder. He literally got up and came over and scolded me, but that's another conversation for another day. Yeah, I actually, one of the things I love doing is the connections I have made in growing up in South Dakota, very close with Lakota and Nakota Sioux. It's one of the reasons my connections and my paradigm, how I look at the natural world, was definitely influenced by them. My grandmother and my indigenous friends growing up. But throughout the show, I met so many other indigenous people, and I've continued to work those relationships going forward. And that's one of the things I actually cherish the most, that and kids and Bigfoot, as you know.
Wow, it is incredible. Honestly, it's incredible. So Renee, to kind of to go on from there, as you mentioned, the last word you said was Bigfoot. So what is your actual opinion of Bigfoot? Now, a lot of people have seen you on Finding Bigfoot and seen you on, but we want to hear your actual opinion from you.
Yeah, it's so funny. The Renee sayer, the skeptical scientist. I'm Scully with 3 molders. I love Bigfoot, and I am fascinated by Bigfoot. I'm driven by curiosity. It's the reason I became a scientist. Question is, what is Bigfoot, in my opinion? After all these years, I honestly still don't know, Daniel, because I've never, quote unquote, seen a Bigfoot. I personally have had experiences that I can't explain. I know people near and dear to my heart who swear that they've seen a Sasquatch. I still don't know. it's one of the things that, as busy as I am, keeps me connected, because I want to make sure that my Bigfoot community is, I'm protective of my Bigfoot community. I don't want people to be, hoaxed or hoodwinked or mocked and ridiculed and made fun of, because there is something going on here that still fascinates me. I mean, it's been over a decade of my life. When we started filming Finding Bigfoot, Brian, I think we talked about this. My nephew didn't even come up to my hip. When I left the show, he's 6'4". I mean, I spent over a decade of my life. 9 months, we were, the four of us, 9 months of the year, we were gone. So, one thing I do like to say is, I think diving into it is, I would see a lot more of maybe people taking an opportunity to make money off of it or something. And I don't mean to be cynical. I am even more fascinated and intrigued after all of this time. But for the record, yes, I still don't believe it's a biological undiscovered species. I just don't see the evidence for that as much as Meldrum and Cliff will chuckle with me, or Cliff will want to rib me. I'm here as a voice to say, raising the bar for scientific inquiry, calling out the scientific community. Brian, I don't know. I think you had a busy table yourself. You were, that's the hard part when you're a speaker at these conferences. You don't get to go away and see the other presentations. But basically, when I went to Tennessee, Darby is Darby. So Darby and I, that's when we first met, and he was like, I'm so excited. And we talked bears, and we talked DNA, and we talked genetics, and we talked raising the bar and keeping, and I know you want to talk a little bit about this later, but my presentation was saying, look, I want Bigfoot to be real. Okay. And I understand how hard it is. Let's take Bigfoot off the table. How hard it is to change the paradigm or an accepted belief or protocol in the academic world. Not even about Bigfoot. And that was one thing I did in Tennessee, was talked about how the established beliefs were this: a large cataclysmic event. I use Mount St. Helens as an example. Even then, it was so hard to get people to change their ears. The policy work, and who makes policy, is financially motivated, run by politics and big corporations. So I basically said, simmer that down. Now you have the Bigfoot community. You have people who will try to, make it an opportunity where they can make money off of it, number one, or number two, for whatever interest. But when a study is being funded, it's so important to look at who is driving it, how is it funded, and who's sourcing it. So
wow, yeah, and say I think that's a brilliant opinion, and I think it's I say it's like Bigfoot and the UK. I'll say it's a very, very kind of skeptical thing. People either believe or they don't, but then having kind of the possibility that it could be, but then still believing not. I think it's incredible, and say yeah.
Well, one thing that we talked about real early on when I got invited, when I was introduced to you, I love that it was sitting down watching these shows with your grandpa and then your nan eventually. That's why I'm on this podcast talking to you, Daniel. I love what you're doing. Bigfoot to me is still this mystery that we still don't understand. And as a scientist, 0 is a data point, people, and you don't get to conduct research in an envelope, be in an echo chamber. You have to share your information. You have to be open to other ideas. Sometimes, you can't just be like, yes, I know, and shoot the other side down. And the other half of my Tennessee presentation was, as a scientist, understanding what it's like to change policy and protocols. Now trying to do that in the Bigfoot community. Oh my gosh. And which is what I was speaking to you, Daniel. This is not just fans of a football club or needlepoint or, dachshund lovers. This is a emotional loaded community, and you can get some hotheads and some oddballs in here than that you don't encounter in other places. And people can get upset quickly, as I think you've already experienced. And it was one thing I really wanted you to understand. So I'm always calling out that, the first thing I've been saying to people going to town halls is curiosity. Get outside, discover for yourself. And I love that Bigfoot is a vehicle to get kids excited about the outdoor world. I've been saying this for 15 years. It was what kept me going, because otherwise I would have lost it while getting on this TV show. I like to call it the reality TV circus sideshow that I did for a decade. It wasn't, what I signed up for. I thought I was heading off to graduate school, but I digress. Bigfoot gets kids excited about the outdoor world, number one. Number two, you got to get out there and understand your environment. And you might not find Bigfoot, but you're going to learn a lot about the natural world, and you're going to learn about what we need to protect. Then number three, if you really want to find Bigfoot and do it right, everybody that's raised the bar on science, get the junk science and that low-hanging fruit and that clickbait BS that's out there. And here's the thing, I just see myself getting a little upset. I get ticked off when the people are pretending it to be a real scientific, adventure, a real scientific research, and it's not. And I'll digress there. But if it's a mockumentary or they're having fun, I think that Huckleberry, those guys are great, but they're not pretending that it's a real show, And to my knowledge, Finding Bigfoot is the only show where we had it written in our contract. If anybody faked anything, they're gone. And we actually executed that. Now, I'm not saying people didn't plot something and fake us out, or that, Cliff and Bobo didn't take a hot air balloon the whole way. I mean, there was some adventure. But I mean, when we were doing those night investigations, and if we heard something or we collected something, we weren't faking the calls or faking tracks, at least to my knowledge. I mean, we enforced that. We demanded it. We were one of those early shows of we're going out and doing this. I mean, my favorite part of Finding Bigfoot is you could sit there and watch these witness encounters and reports. We would go there. We would attempt to do an investigation. We do a recreation. We do an investigation, and what happened there was really happening. And making television is really boring. Doing those night investigations would be a couple minutes, where sometimes 6-hour adventures. You're going to get a flyby from a cat. I can't prevent it. So if you get a cat by here. Before I ran on that, but it's so important to me that misinformation, disinformation right now is so rampant. It's so hard before, and now it's even worse, and as I travel the country and I keep myself busy with a lot of, I do public speaking. I've done a few TED Talks. I now go and I speak. And I speak on many topics, othering and belonging, which I am trying to bring into the Bigfoot community because it's so critical. I speak on LGBTQ equality. I speak on, science education, STEM, critical thinking. These are all things. We need critical thinking. We need to raise the bar because, have you read Sagan's book yet that I was telling you about, where he basically covers all of those, all of the biases, all those. You need to educate yourself on the pseudo fallacies and all of that. You can be there ready to jump out of the way of that next, huckster, because there are so many people out there who are just trying to make a buck or get 15 minutes of fame or whatever it may be. But yeah, and I'm happy to see that a lot of people are starting to talk about that.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and I'm going to slightly move into the next question because you started to kind of answer it for me, and kind of, I think what you've done there with Finding Bigfoot, and everyone that I talk to, they see you guys as the original people that started this kind of tree more, and really then started to publicize it, because you guys started quite early on. I don't know the exact date when you started Finding Bigfoot, but it's like you from a lot of people that I've spoken to, they said that you're like the original kind of guys who started looking for this kind of creature or being or whatever.
Well, thank you. I feel like I should be throwing some kind of gangster pimp coat on there and playing some music. I mean, I think we were one of the first. We're not the first. I mean, we are standing on, I'd like to say, the big shoulders of those who came before us. You had, I am drawing a total blank, Monster Quest. Oh my gosh, So, Doug Hychak is way predates what Doug was doing. Way predates what Finding Bigfoot was doing. Finding Bigfoot was that first running where you're doing that aspect of it, but we are no way the first. We stand on the shoulders of Doug Hychak, other smaller productions, and then of course the originals who were actually doing those expeditions trying to find it. Going back, you got Meldrum. Well, before Meldrum was Grover Krantz, and then you had, and we don't even need, should we go down the list of, I don't know if you want more questions, but, we got the John Greens, Bindernagel, all of them, Renee Hinden. What an amazing personality. It goes on and on. I don't want to leave names off, but that's very sweet of you to say. I think in that concept, and we hit at just the right time with this goofy group that they threw us together, and this my dysfunctional road family, my Bigfoot brothers. The timing of it. But I think it's what hit was that, and I say this in a lot of my presentations at Bigfoot comes up. Even if there wasn't that show Finding Bigfoot, Cliff, Matt, Bobo would have still been doing what they were doing. I love Bigfoot. I love me a Bigfoot story. I always want to drop my toe in and say, okay, what is going on here? And then they tell me about it, and they love having me because then I'm going to be like, wait, what? Or what? Really? But those guys would have been doing that either way. Now, yeah, it's my one request is call it for what it is. Are you entertainment? Are you really, that's the thing. Watch out for that. And then now we're getting into, with AI and science, it's harder and harder, and you have to have a keener lens and just be we're already, it's so difficult already to analyze, but it's now more than ever. As I say to my kids when I go to these presentations, the internet and all the technology being thrown at you, my generation is we have these things called an encyclopedia or library, and you have to walk inside and look it up and check it out. And you guys have this little computer in your hand and all the answers, but it's all the more harder. You're just, and what people will believe on the internet just gobsmacks me. And a full assault on science in the last decade is just so disheartening. So to make yourself the best scientist, naturalist, you guys have to vet your sources. Vet.
So to kind of roll on from that, how did you, Ranae, get involved in finding Bigfoot?
Well, I love me a Bigfoot story. So there's this thing called the internet. And so around the time where people were easily getting online, and this is in fact, I remember the first time I was with my sister, and she, had a computer at home. This is in the 90s or something like that. And, an at home where everybody's having at home computers. And one of the first things we looked at because of our dad is we were like, let's go find a Bigfoot story. And that's how we found the BFRO. So that's when I became aware of the BFRO. So flash forward, it's years later, my dad had passed away, and I was going through some of his belongings, and I found some Bigfoot clippings, and it made me feel very young, and it made me feel close to my dad again. So I wanted to find Bigfoot stories where I was doing field work, and my main project was on the Olympic Peninsula. And so I sent an email to Matt Moneymaker, BFRO. Matt responds, asks for my number, calls me. So this is like 2003, maybe 2003. And to just condense this, I do remember, you're going to be the Jane Goodall of Sasquatch. It's going to be a woman who finds one. And they come very close to women because women aren't intimidating. This is not me mocking. I'm just trying to do a different voice of Matt. And I remember saying, with all due respect, I don't believe it's a real animal, but I love a Bigfoot story. I am a field biologist and I work with salmon and so for the longest time, if there would be a comment on the BFRO page talking about working with a biologist at NOAA who collars elk and does salmon, he was referring to me. So I signed an NDA. And I say this, it's really interesting. I say I'm not a BFRO member, not to throw shade at the BFRO. I am constantly applauding, collect data, just collect it, really be select, have a system, that applies everywhere, whatever you're studying. Do good science. So I applaud the BFRO and what they're doing. I just, to keep my perspective, I like to stay a little bit removed. So that's how I wound up on the show. I had an online wink relationship with Matt where I would leave bait out there. I would be going out there 3 days a week to these field sites where they're total hotspots. And I would also, a part of the year, would be out there months on end doing my survey. So that was for over a decade that I was doing that. And then finally met Matt in person. And then I was supposed to be heading out. I was at NOAA during all this time, working with the lower Elwha. There was the Elwha dam removal project was going on. At that point, the largest dam removal in the history. And now the Klamath is coming down. And that is now the largest dam removal project. So salmon, we were basically studying the pre-dam removal. That led to a movement study. I was basically tracking little baby salmon as they go all over. And same thing is happening now down on the Klamath, which is gorgeous raw country right there, getting up to near Willow Creek and all that. But that was what I was doing. Matt then contacted me. I was supposed to be heading to grad school. Next thing I knew, I was filming a pilot because I thought it was going to be like, I get to go to this trip to Alaska, which is one of my favorite places. I did a bunch of research up there with brown bears. Basically, what part of the salmon a brown bear eats is what my research was. And it turned into what part of the brown bear a Bigfoot eats. I don't know. But with that being, because I filmed a pilot not thinking that it would be over a decade of my life. And it went
That's amazing that it happened to be right place, right time.
Lots of times, what's really interesting about that, and this is total honesty, and I know I've done some interviews and spoke to this. Kids, I'm very much trying to always mentor, that next generation. What do you do? I said, find the person who is doing what you're passionate about. Do what you're passionate about. Find that person who's doing what you want to do or is close to it and make them your mentor. And so here I was doing what I wanted to do. I was supposed to head off to grad school. And I do this little trip. And then all of a sudden they say, no, I'm under contract. They're like, hey, this took off. I was like, wait, what? And I was, honestly, you guys, I was devastated. I was physically ill. I was like, I'm on this other path. And so where I'm going with this is sometimes in the moment, a door will close and you think this is awful. And maybe another door opens. And I was like, okay, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. And then that door closed. And actually, I wasn't supposed to be at Oregon State University. And then, 4 years later, I find out, oh, that was okay. And now I'm here. And then I love this part of it. But then there's this other aspect of it. There's a lot of, it can be toxic working in reality TV. There's all these downsides of it. Well, that's a door that seems like it's closed there, but that opens something else. Some musician, media friends of mine we were talking about earlier, Brian, who I was miserable for a period of time filming the show because I'm like, yeah, it's the closest thing to actually, we really were trying. I mean, we would have a crew, we would go as small as we could. we would be as cloak as we could, as stealth as possible. We're working within the confines of a network and a production company. All of those limits, you feel really handicapped. When we got some traction, all of a sudden we were this low budget, big ad dollar pop culture hit show. We got our contracts rewritten. Number one thing, nothing is fake. Number two, one of us gets to go and really squatch without the whole camera crew. I mean, we took those moments to do that, but it was really hard. So, but I sit with that, remembering that one door closes, another one opens, and always look for that opportunity that is speaking to your heart and taking you in your right path, because the universe, for whatever, is always trying to knock you off. But if you're true to yourself, you're where you're supposed to be.
That's one of those things that Cliff and I have had so many conversations about in private, about the show and the 10 years that you guys spent doing, and the things that people don't get to see behind the scenes, and how that affected you guys even long term, even after the show went off the air. And it's some amazing conversations. Cliff and I've had quite a few of those over a couple of drinks. And I love the approach that you've always taken from the skeptical science part of this. I'm a very skeptical person. I think you and I may have even talked about that in Tennessee. But the one thing that I've always had a difficult time, and I want to ask you this, I had a conversation recently. I had a guy on the show that I thought was going to tell me a Bigfoot encounter story. And I famously don't get into people's stories before they come on. I hear them for the first time. And he was a doctor. He was a PhD in primatology. And Dr. Shiro, and he said, he starts talking about the mythology of Bigfoot. It was clear to me very early on, he didn't believe that Bigfoot was a biological species, undiscovered biological species, very much like yourself. And we got into this conversation because it's difficult for me as a skeptic. I'm about 85% there on Bigfoot existent. I haven't seen one. So I'm not 100% there. And this is the problem I have with reconciling. I have friends, very close friends, people like Cliff. He wrote the foreword to my book, and I still can't be 100% there with him in that these things are real biological species. My show is based on encounter stories of people that I believe have had encounters with what they believe to be Bigfoot. How do you reconcile that, just as a person, first and foremost, that's into this, and a scientist? How do you reconcile that part of it, and separating the science from the anecdotal stories and the people that are involved in these stories?
So when I did a TED Talk, and they get to name them, and I'm like, to me is like, curiosity is driven by Bigfoot. And I basically, in that talk, I think it was like 2016, was saying, I believe the majority of reports, I'm talking about just all reports, people just coming in saying, I saw Bigfoot, not just sitting down and really analyzing, because you have this shotgun, thousands and thousands of reports. I think majority of them are misidentification. I think then you have a section that are pareidolia. I think you have a section that people call it mythical. They're on something, or they have bad vision, or they're schizophrenic, or they're hearing something. I think you have people who do hoaxes. And I stand by this, because I remember the guys always saying, well, a hoaxer is always going to come out and brag about it. And I'm like, the best, I know people have had good, just they run it. That's the best hoax. The longer you keep somebody believing it's real, the better you're laughing at home sitting by your campfire or whatever. All of those, you kind of run those together. And I stand by this. When you talk about all the greater, I think covers well in the upper 90s. I do. Throw all those away, though. Throw all those out the. And let's just say, I very tongue-in-cheek was like 0.00 something, whatever. At the end of the day, though, this is the part where I'm on this podcast with you guys and still talking about this. It's why I spent a decade of my life in the woods, running around with these guys. At the end of the day, you cannot explain. Not many of them, but there are the ones you cannot explain. You just cannot explain them away. That's why I'm fascinated. That's why the phenomenon persists. Now let's kind of bring this full circle. How do I reconcile that as a scientist? Well, science is a paradigm. It's how I view the world. I treat it very much not like just the subject that a kid might take in school, but it's also a verb. It's how I approach problem solving, the scientific method. I mean, so as a trained scientist, this is one thing, bringing it back, guys, raising the bar, got to call out the Bigfoot community to employ the scientific method. Own up on pseudo fallacies and make yourself the best scientist. Make yourself the best critical thinker. So if you agree and have this belief that it's a biological species, go start hanging out with the groups that think the other thing. Don't just put yourself in an echo chamber with everybody and give you a bunch of yes men, because then you're just falling flat. Nothing. You got to challenge and push. So we used to think that the earth was flat. We used to think of it heliocentric, that the sun revolved around the earth. Constantly, that's what the whole scientific method is about. Retesting You can see it in physics. Einstein was so ahead of his time in using math, or even previous civilizations we now then use math and science. Oh, hey, they were onto something. And then we test it, and then maybe a new piece comes in and fits, and the puzzle comes together, and you test it and you retest it, and you null hypothesis test it. Daniel, you try to disprove it so that you prove your opinion. And it brings me back to multidisciplinary science is so important. That's answered from myself and more of the field than I am. It comes in from geology. It comes in from, fisheries, just the sociology, animal behavior. It's not just one field. You overlap them. You need to have disagreements to push. When somebody's going through their thesis or even to get their doctorate, they're going to go through that board and have their exam, and they're going to test and they're going to fire at you. And that's the whole point. Within the scientific thing, again, back to Tennessee, when you get the PhDs up here real high and they're like stuck in their way, it used to be all the damn guys, all of the people damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. And now we're like, actually, taking the wood out is bad. Leaving the wood in the system is actually more natural. It took forever, as those guys, that's what they were educated and trained, and then they get up in the policy and they're making the decisions as the corporations are bringing the money, and who makes the rules, who writes the regulations. To change that is a long, frustrating process. But the data is showing that that's not the way to do it. That's what science is, and it's a process and it's a method. You can apply that in the Bigfoot world, but throw out the junk science. Raise the bar.
100%.
And one more thing just to add to that, Brian, because I feel like I don't want to evade your question there is, I don't believe it's an undiscovered biological species. I would love for it to be real. I would love nothing more to see a Bigfoot. Everything that I've seen or experienced that resonates and explains, if you take, again, I'm not going to be in an echo chamber and say, well, I'm right and you're wrong and throw your data out. Everything of these strange reports that can't be anything else, you can't just throw them out. If I look at those, if I look at the whole historical record, which is the oral traditions of indigenous people around the world, they don't tell you, the majority of them say it's not a flesh and blood animal. It's something beyond science. Call it what you will. My beliefs align much more in that realm than it being a biological species. Then, of course, everybody is in the Bigfoot. Oh, geez, she's in the paranormal. I don't think Bigfoot can. Sorry, I got a little hair flying around. I don't know. I've seen, Bobo has told me he's seen UFOs. I believe members of our crew, while filming the show, we've seen odd lights. I've seen orbs. I've never seen a UFO. I've seen orbs. I've heard weird sounds. I've seen weird eye shine. I've seen and experienced a lot of odd things. But, track nerds, as I say nerd affectionately, I'm a nerd myself, track nerds are all like, look, here's physical evidence. And I'm like, okay, let's look at your track evidence. And they're going crazy. And then I'm like, okay, now this is this track that there's no way to fake it. But this track set now goes into a dry creek bed and then just stops. How do you explain that? So you don't get to cherry pick your data. So that then says it's something beyond science. You don't have, So that's why I lean in that. I believe Bigfoot is something beyond the current grasp of science. What that is, I don't know. But what I don't appreciate is in the Bigfoot community, when somebody says it's this and then they're just like mocking the other side, I'm like, oh, well, then prove it then. I mean, who are you to tear that side down? Can't we all collectively work together? We're in this fringe community where we're getting people teasing us or, rolling their eyes at us. Let's work together. Let's tear each other down.
Yeah, 100%, and say it's amazing. That's what I'll say. So I'm gonna say to everyone out there, we are gonna take a very, very short break with an advert, and then we'll be back. We'll be back for a few more questions after the break. Okay, guys, I'll see you after the break.
for half an hour on Saturday afternoons and for quarter of an hour on Wednesday evenings. The world's only show about hard science, weird shit, and surreality. And it's co-presented by an anthropomorphic chicken. Be there or be square.
An anthropomorphic chicken.
Wow.
Well, I will say 100%. John is a brilliant guy. But I would say that advert is funny. That's what I say. That is funny. And I saw Brian's face and your face, Renee, when that came on, and you went, "Whoo!"
Very interesting.
I'm all about humor and keeping it light. I'm just I've got to tell you, we got to, when you asked me some UK Bigfoot questions, and I was like, I got to be honest with you, I just got to go rewatch that episode. And then that, of course, as you understand, we film hours and hours and hours, and it gets edited down to this, or sometimes what I'm saying to, I might be some of those clips. We're talking about it weeks later because you film it, it's edited. We got to get a bite or word, and then I'm at a different location, or we're at a different location and filming something months, weeks later. So yeah, I'm having a little PTSD after that whole rewatching the episode. Wink, wink. I can't. But I had to think back, and all of a sudden I start getting a flood of memories when I get the reference, all of that. So. Did I answer my beliefs? Okay, good. I want to make sure I got you guys covered.
I'm gonna go now into kind of the UK episodes, and kind of it's kind of my final topic, I shall say. So before we go into the UK episodes of Finding Bigfoot, though, I will go, what is your favourite episode on Finding Bigfoot?
That is such a hard question. It's like asking, who's your favorite cousin? Because there's different favorites for different reasons. There's where I got the best food, who had the best, where I could get the best, like spa body treatment or something. I have a short leg in my back, and all the body work. Like, if you ever noticed those Final Night investigations or something, it would always be Cliff and I would have to do the hard hikes. So it would be like, I need some body work done. When I met amazing people, so it was so many different reasons. So there's not just one. I will say some of my favorites was going to Nepal. Was amazing. I'd always have wanted to go there. It was one of my bucket list items. I went early. The second we were done wrapping the other place and we knew we were going to be going there, everybody else was home for the break. And then I went to Nepal early and hiked and spent time and got acclimated. And then I went up to Tibet, and I went to the highest monastery in the world and saw the Holy Mother literally with my eyes up the watershed. And I'm a restoration ecologist. Watersheds are my being. I mean, protecting watersheds, that's what I'm about. So to see this ultimate watershed, I have a fossil here with a, Mennonite out of that was just like the best. Just the random ones, really the kids and amazing people that I met. Going to Bluff Creek with Bob Gimlin on horseback, the first time he'd ever been back there. I mean, it's like going to the Vatican with the Pope. How do you beat that? I mean, I was really nerding out there. But it wasn't about the Bigfoot aspect of it. It was Bob Gimlin had a lot of overlaps. I mean, he's this amazing, sweet man, and he's petite. I grew up in South Dakota, so there's a lot of ranch fellas who are small, but they're just sinew, wiry, like, powerhouses. And that's Bob. So he may not be tall in stature, but he's, powerful and larger than life. And even though my dad was like 6'7", there's just so many overlaps. They were both into boxing. They both came from ranches, grew up around ranches and horses. They both had this daredevil, Evel Knievel overlap and then they both were obviously Bigfoot. So we got to talk about Bob and I went on a walk. It was really funny because we all showed up, we landed, Bob invited me out, and we went for a walk and had this beautiful little meeting, and came back, and I think the guys were kind of ribbing me a little bit, and remember Bob kind of called him out, and was all protective of me. It was really sweet. And we're both in Washington State. I've just been so busy. I actually have some things, which reminds me, I need to shout out to him. I'm overdue for a non-Bigfoot conversation visit to Bob. So off the top of my head, those are two that immediately jump out. But it's really about those town halls, meeting those kids. I mean, for me, meeting all those junior future naturalists that have that look of wonder and enthusiasm in their eyes, and they want to go out and find out what Bigfoot is for themselves. That was my favorite part.
Good. And to be completely honest, Ranae, I think that's probably my favorite part. Seeing you guys with Bob in Bluff Creek is incredible. I don't think you could ask for anything better than that.
Yeah, what an honor. That was a ton of fun.
So to kind of move on from that, my last couple of questions for you is when you came over to the UK, and you were filming Finding Bigfoot, what were your impressions of Bigfoot in the UK?
Well, I mean, we always did our research going in. There's Lynn, the folklorist, who now I love it. You get to see her on Paranormal. I remember that show was coming out because I was under contract. We could not do the show. But I actually suggested Lynn to them, and I was like, "Here's a fabulous folklorist," and I love seeing how she has continued on. The folklore behind the Green Man, the Ben McDewey and the Gray Man. It's up there. There's a history here. But you guys took down all your trees down there, to build your houses. So even though stories and reports go back to the 15th and 16th century, there's just no habitat, in my opinion. I would think that I'd get over there. So coming down to your neck of the woods, I'm like, corridor connectivity is critical to all known species, whether you are a raccoon, make a joke with my UK thing there, whatever species you are, fox, bear, whatever, corridor connectivity is critical to your habitat survival. It would be so difficult down there in the southern part of the island. Now you get up to the Cairngorms, and that's so similar to the Pacific Northwest. I actually have a friend of mine from uni, to use your language, back from my college days. She's actually a scientist that's up there at Cromarty, right there at the outlet near Loch Ness, Murray Firth. So I've been out to visit her, not while we were filming that time, but another time I went back to the UK and was able to visit with her. So yeah, you have more habitat on the north part of your big island. But in the southern part, yeah, I would be a little bit more skeptical. But then again, if you look at reports throughout the US, there's these areas where there seems to be open space. But I think I was skeptical, but not cynical. And that's the difference. I always like to say this in an interview: cynicism, zealotry, skepticism's right there in the middle where you want to be. Whether you believe something or not, still say, always question, always still look and make sure, vet the sources, vet. Being a skeptic is a good thing.
And I will 100% say on that, when I'm always out in the forest, and I think it goes to a lot of researchers that having a side of skeptical on one side of your brain is really, really good. So then you don't turn up and go, "Oh, a tree's fallen, it's Bigfoot." You've got that real kind of skeptical and go, "Hold on a minute, let's look around, let's look at all those possibilities that it could be." And I think that's incredible. So moving on to my second question about the UK is, did you find any specific evidence or any audio or anything that would kind of support Bigfoot in the UK?
Yeah, so I went in and rewatched that episode and remembered oh, poor Bobo and Cliff and those kilts and all those midges. I remember those midges, and you'll see lots of times if you're ever watching Finding Bigfoot that I would put this scarf up, and it would either be to be warm or to keep bugs off of me. Yeah, so those guys, that would have been rough. Yikes. I know that when Cliff and I heard a call, we watched it last night, and it's again, I can watch these episodes and I'll go, oh yeah. And when I first met you, you talked about a different Neil, and I was like, oh, now I remember. So Hamish was who Bobo and Cliff did the recreation, went up to their location and up in right off of Loch Ness. Starts with an A. Can't remember the name of it. But they went there, and then we went further up in the Cairngorms. I went with Neil, or initial Neil, where he had that photo. How far was he from where it was the straightaway? I remember that being there. I remember looking at the photo and seeing, in my opinion, I can't rule out that's a person, and honestly, that leans more towards a person. I even just looking at it could almost see like a hat. That was my take on that. But what I loved about Neil now was like, I don't know. That openness of it. Then going with the other Neil, I'm trying to think of the two names. The second, it was Neil and Neil, and we went to that.
Neil Young and Neil Robinson.
Yeah, Neil. Is it Robinson or Robson? Yeah,
Robson, possibly. Yeah.
Robson. So Neil Young is the first guy that we kind of went with Adam, because Neil and Neil went with Adam to that location that Matt followed up with them. And if I recall, it was a windy, cold night and nothing happened. But I'm just speaking to what my experience was. The photo that I saw with Neil did not, elicit anything with me to go, whoa, I can't explain that. Or when I followed up with Neil Robson, I believe is his name. I am not accusing, just for the record, accusing Neil of making that story out. What I found interesting, and then because it's so weird to be there and then see how it gets edited and make it look like you're, a really nice guy, and I enjoyed visiting with him. What I found so interesting was, if I'm coming back fishing, which I fish a lot, and I'm with my friends, and I scream till you run, and you're on this elevated trail, wooden trail. And I'm freaked out enough that I'm assuming he doesn't do this all the time. I mean, if you're doing something out of behavior that you're telling somebody to run and you're panicked, and then you get in the car and you don't have a conversation about it, that's what was so weird to me. That's what I couldn't figure out. Like, I don't know. That's that funny with me. And I couldn't figure out, or maybe, everybody handles trauma and stress in different ways. Maybe he just, shut down the car. I don't know. I also thought it was such a large, they were saying 9, 10, over 9 feet. They were saying more like 9 to 11. It's something that large over in that brush, not even just moving, because Matt was like, it could quickly move. Well, when I walked over there, you would just something that large, when it would step there, you would hear it moving, even if you're on an elevated. So, but I was like, okay. But I did love the habitat around there. I mean, there's more habitat there once I was actually there. But to me, the real habitat was up in Scotland. I mean, if we were a large terrestrial undiscovered species, apex predator, I'd want to be I'd be moving to Scotland to, eat haggis and some sheep intestines and deer up there. I mean, we just have so much more cover, but
Amazing. Thank you, Renee. So my final question for you, Renee, is so obviously I know a bit of background info here. And does too, but what are your future plans for the Bigfoot community and for your kind of conferences and your Bigfoot life, I should say?
My Bigfoot life. I know somebody else. Your Bigfoot life. So,
Tag for
well,
book now.
so a great book. I keep myself, once Finding Bigfoot wrapped, I needed to really heal my body. I was dealing with some stuff going on, so I just, not even talking to anybody, I took a full year and a half off, and then was kind of ramping up, heading into some other things, and then COVID hit. And so now that we're out of COVID, I do have several projects going on that are on the down low. What I can say is very close to my heart is anything that works with the Indigenous community. I love that. Or habituation, repeat encounters. People who very much love somebody who can come out, who is a scientist, who knows how to do research, is not afraid, will blindly go down a trail, but will also say like nothing happened, or isn't, love to have me come out. And so there's been some of that going on. I almost always have to sign NDAs on those. I keep very busy with my public speaking, as you know. I do a few Bigfoot conferences, but I also stay really busy. As I spoke earlier, just colleges, universities, the public circuit, really, but always my favorite thing is, Daniel, we've talked about this, is to go to schools. So I work with Carrie Byron from Mythbusters. They have an event where Explorer Media and kind of have been bringing back basically a national STEM challenge. And the first one is this year that I was supposed to be at, but I'm going to be somewhere else. Anyway, timing didn't work on that. But really, one of the nearest things to my heart is to go to schools, whether it's elementary, middle school, high school, and talk to the kids about what is Bigfoot. But more than anything, to challenge them to raise the bar, think for yourselves. Don't take the low-hanging fruit. Also, using your phone, be kind. How do you communicate? How do you exchange information? There's such a desperate, dire need for that right now in our society. We can have respectful, intelligent conversation. Just because, you think it's a biological species, I think that it's something beyond, whether it's, a spirit or an alien. But I lean more towards that. But I still don't know. Don't pigeonhole me. I mean, those are the conversations we need to be having. To say you don't know something is okay. So that's really one of my favorite things to do. And I stay busy doing that. And then I also work. For my sanity, I like to keep my toe in the scientific community. So I help peer review on basically anything that's with brown bears or the watershed restoration. The Klamath. I was a part of the Elwha Dam removal project. I was part of this ongoing movement study, and then now the Klamath is coming out. So I still work with them. And then of course, eDNA is evolving. So there is the eDNA collaborative unit at the University of Washington with that's Ryan Kelly and Kara are part of that. So people are always asking me. So I've been coming in and asking them, okay, how do I communicate and share to make sure that people are so much with new science, holding those feet to the fire, if you will, big feet to the fire, if you will, holding the feet to the fire, making sure it's not junk science, making sure it is good, scientific, peer-reviewed science. Because as technology increases, guess what happens? Everybody just starts getting their fingers on it, and it can go awry in a heartbeat.
Definitely. And say, some I will mention, Renee, and I know you are thinking about it, but I will say it to all our UK friends. I'll say Renee will be over here for a VIP event at the end of April. It's April 28th. Called the Bigfoot Bash, and it'll be on Sunday, the 28th of April. Tickets are all over online. Renee's posted it on her page. It's all over our pages. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. And there's a big announcement on that day.
Yeah, I'm I gotta say this, I really am. And the way that this all organically happened and how quickly this came about, having to try to juggle and move things. Welcome to the world. I don't know how that all goes. But I really am. So for so long, there are so many fans, friends, researchers out there that are saying, are you ever going to come over? And okay, we're coming over. Myself, Ryan is coming, Ronnie's going to be there, and we're going to have a little R team ready to roll. I'm so looking forward to it.
Definitely. And say it's I think it will be an amazing day, and I hope all of you are there. So, Renee, Brian, this has been an incredible podcast, and Brian, I think you can agree with me that it has been amazing, hasn't it?
Absolutely, Renee never disappoints. So thank you so much for your time and spending as much time as you did with us and answering all the questions that are probably burning in people's minds. So we definitely appreciate it.
Well, let's put those fires out today. Anyway, I look forward to crossing paths with you both again soon. Brian, I hope not this much time. I know I need to get back to you. I am so behind getting on podcasts. I'm just trying to put everything in order, so we'll make it happen.
For those in the United States, particularly the Southeast, we will all be together once again in June. We'll be June the 8th. We'll all be down at the Ocala Bigfoot Conference. Yep. Russell Accord, Ranae Holland, I think some other folks. RPG is going to be there. Ken Gearhard's going to be there. Matt Pruitt, our buddy Matt, Adam Davies, myself. And of course, Daniel will be there as well. I think we're going to have Connor Flynn on the stage as well. Tons of people. So if you guys want to check out the Great Florida Bigfoot Conference, you can get that on Gather Up Events and get your tickets. There's still tickets available for that. And you can come and hang out with all of us on June the 8th in Florida.
Yeah. And for those that are, stateside, I will be in Estes Park, Colorado on the 19th and 20th. The 19th is a private event. That's a VIP meet and greet on the 19th. On the 20th is the public event, free to the public at Estes Park, Colorado. And that will be Russ, Ronnie, and myself, and then other vendors. And that is actually one that that organizer reached out to me years ago. And I'm literally getting through emails now. I'm still trying to get through emails from, it's been a lot. I'm busy. But it's nice to double back through working with Lee. It was like, hey, yeah. And I was like, why is that name so familiar? And here you come back, 5-7 years later. I'm like, I just, that Bigfoot community, either I'm right here, otherwise it could take you over. It could take you over. And I still have some other things that keep me busy, but I look forward to seeing you in June, if not sooner. And you, sir, Daniel, I'll see
3 weeks.
Oh my goodness. See you both soon. So good chatting with you both. And I look forward to more soon.
Amazing. So thank you to everyone out there. And thank you to our co-host Brian and of course Ranae Holland. Keep searching, stay mythical, guys, and we shall see you soon. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Mythical Legends podcast. For more information, check out our Facebook group. The truth is out there.